Hey, hey, hey.
Hey.
It's a Dads and Drink show. I don't know what episode we're on. 4?
Four quad. Look, ever since the last time when we were talking about how far you have to go, now I'm just ticking them off. It's like a prison cell wall in front of my office. Number 4.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's at a certain point, I'll tell you, you lose count. That's why I number my episodes of my podcast, because you run out of fingers and toes.
That's where we hope to be, my friend.
We'll get there. We will get there. You know, and shout out to Joe Rogan, who's just poaching the Jeff Macolino podcast for his guests. In back-to-back 2 days in a row. I'm like, hey, I know that guy. Hey, I know that guy too. What the hell?
Look at this. You're on the cutting edge, man. You've got the guys before they're the guys, because they're going to blow up on Rogan, but you're the one. So hopefully there's some residual kickback on that.
Well, in fairness, Bill Ottman was on my podcast after he had been on Rogan twice. So, and then I listened to the beginning of that, and I'm like, oh, because his people reached out to me, and I'm like, oh, he had a scheduled podcast with Rogan. He's like, who can I, test my. I need to test it out on podcasts where I won't make an ass of myself.
Wait, so you're Joe Rogan's Fluffer?
I'm Dr. Phil's Fluffer too. I had a teacher. I had a teacher who got fired for being on OnlyFans. And
remember that.
She told me, she's like, I got a PR team, and they're like, this is the first stop for you. Was my podcast. And I'm like, well, why? She's like, oh, you're so nice, and you let people talk and all that. I'm like, great. And then, a month and a half later, she's on Dr. Phil. I'm like, I was the launching pad. She had to go from this perfectly nice drunk idiot to Dr. Phil.
Well, hey, it just means you're doing something right, Mr. Macolino. That's what it means, my friend.
I guess. Speaking of getting fired for having an OnlyFans, that sounds like office politics. I don't know. Is that a segue?
It's kind of a segue, but it does work.
It works. Yeah. We'll go with it. So hey, since A&D stole our money from episode 3 and Tom Segura stole our episode 2 money, we'll try to be careful about our fair use and commentary and reaction to these videos, you assholes.
Really, seriously, that's all I'm saying. Look, it's another thing. We're on the radar, Jeff. If we weren't out there the way we are, they wouldn't even know we existed. So,
yeah, A&E can suck my C.
Dude, we were the most entertaining part of Live Cops that they've had in 2 years. I think Live PD has actually died at this point because of the amount of just mundane horse shit that it is. We try to give you a little love, and you take our quarter. Fuck off.
Come on, man. We needed that quarter.
Come on.
Fuck you too, Tom Segura. And you too, Bert.
Bert, all of you. It's a mission.
He hasn't even done anything wrong. He'd probably be like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't care.
So, hey, let's kick things off. This is what I chose to start with because you sent me this clip, and I just watched this movie for the 150th time this weekend. So I feel like this is a good place to start.
If you would you walk us through a typical day for you?
Yeah,
great.
Well, I generally come in at least 15 minutes late. I use the side door. That way Lumberg can't see me. And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour.
Space out?
Everyone knows spacing out, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be a common office technique.
Mastered at this point.
Yeah. The look real busy, stare at your screen. I don't know what they did before computers.
Oh, I mean, probably doodled a lot, like with a pad of paper in front of you. I still do that.
Oh, yeah.
I still do that in meetings, especially on like Zoom meetings where I have my pen and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm taking copious notes. Meanwhile, I'm setting my fantasy baseball
I'm
lineup.
not even clicking my pen so the tip comes out. I'm just
Right.
gonna.
Meanwhile, on the other screen, I'm studying fucking baseball stats for my fantasy team. No, but I think I told you this. What I love about this is this has become a little more real to me recently, as I'm going to be switching up jobs. But this is the most true to life interview that, like, this is legitimately, if I could ever just give a true interview about any job that I've ever been to. And it's an art form. I don't think it's respected to the same level that it should be, quite honestly.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I just stare at my desk, but it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
I mean,
Peter,
that
would
was
you
never the case with me.
be a good sport and indulge us and just tell us a little more?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something about TPS reports. TPS.
I've got to tell you, I made a joke. I think we'll cut it there because, we don't need Mike
no
Judge
more
stealing all our money.
Yeah.
I used to make a reference all the time to TPS reports in the office when it would be like someone would just be nitpicky bitch. We're going to talk about horrible bosses on a later episode. This isn't even about that. But, man, I work for a couple devils. But someone's being a horrible bitch, and I'm like, yeah, and you use the wrong cover sheet on your TPS report. And you could tell that was my litmus test of people who were cool and people who were fucking stupid. Like, if you work in an office and you've never seen Office Space, I don't respect you. I don't like you. I don't want to know you. And
You're not my tribe.
Am. No, yeah. I once got pulled into HR for Office Space story. I got pulled into HR because I was taking 2 days off for my brother's wedding, and I put a sign of Lumberg, who's not in that clip, Gary Cole, great acting job. And I said, well, yeah, so I'm taking a vacation, so I'm going to need you guys to do my work for me for the next few days. I put it on my computer. Now, no one complained, but the girl who worked in a different department who sat in the cubicle across from me found it funny. So when she went on vacation, she asked for it, but she put it on the back of her monitor. She never put it on the front, so people couldn't see it. So after the third person came up and was like, where is whatever her name was? Where is she? I'm like, well, fuck this. So I go and I put it on the front of her monitor, and one of her coworkers filed an HR complaint that she had that. So she said, that was Jeff's. She wasn't trying to throw me under the bus.
Right.
Under the bus. They're like, what is this? She's like, oh, that's Jeff's. That was the thing. So they called me in. HR calls me in, and I'm like, well, it's from Office Space. And the couple managers who were there chuckled. And the HR person's like, I don't understand. And I'm like, it's a movie. I'm like, you haven't seen Office Space? She's like, no. And I'm like, then you shouldn't be in HR. I feel like you're unqualified.
Well, Jeff, we were talking about this earlier. I do have a tendency to judge people based on things like that. Like, literally, I do. If you're a person who has walked through your entire adult life working in an office and haven't seen Office Space, then there's no reason for me to find common ground. We have separated. We are not. It just is what it is. Like, and I'm not going to take you serious moving forward. I can't do it. It's not going to happen. No, not at all. I love, now as I said, that would be my true exit interview for anywhere, right? I come in late. It's driven every boss I've ever had crazy. I've excelled where I'm at. I move forward. Late is on time is a construct I just don't get. I'm sorry. I
The
just
clock
don't.
is a construct.
It is. I don't, like if I'm there at 9:05, do you think I'm going to be less productive than if I was there at 8:55? Are those 10 minutes? Did I miss something in those 10 minutes that was really going to change the course of the rest of the day? And I have a hard time, and I don't enforce it, which absolutely makes for a madhouse. I've been in that middle management hell for most of my life. So when the people under me are late, I'm like, whatever. They show up. Did they come in? Okay. And I just can't grab it. But luckily, I have found my way, and life guides you to your calling, that I'm in sales. And so that last little part of, I work for about 20 minutes in an actual week. If I can be uber productive for an hour a day, I can generate enough business / commission that I'm going to be okay. Could I work for 10? Sure, I could. What's the trade?
The whole concept of I always used to piss and moan about this. And I was a manager in my job for, by the way, I only managed females. And no insult to any of them. They were great. But it was the first day, I'm like, well, you've got to talk to your team about the dress code, about showing up on time and all this stuff. And I'm like, here's my rule. Don't wear something where I have to talk to you about the dress code, because I'm not comfortable doing that.
Thank you.
Don't have my boss ask me why you're showing up late or leaving early. Just don't be obvious. I don't give a shit if you're here for 30 hours or 40 hours or 70 hours. Just do your job. I don't care. I couldn't care less. It's all a construct, because so many people waste so much time at work because they have to be there a certain amount of time. And I shouldn't even share this story. I used to, I was not in a good place mentally. I was married. Yeah,
that automatically tells you not a good place mentally.
but I was married, and I was miserable, and I hated my job. So I would show up, and at lunchtime I would go to Sonic and get a 64 ounce of Sprite Zero, and I dump half of it out and fill it back up with vodka. Shake it up and sit at my desk all afternoon and drink. And I was happy as a clam. So, you know what happened? I got all my work done from 8 a.m. until 11:30 when I took lunch. All the day's work, plus some. I was the most productive person in the world, so I had nothing to do. It was the most productive I ever was at work. Not a healthy thing, mentally or physically. Let's be clear.
Look,
but
here's the thing.
I was happy. My ex-wife was not happy when she found out.
I'll tell you, the happiest company that I worked at was a company that absolutely directly related. And if we'd have played the Office clip thing through, or the movie from Office Space, you'd have saw with stock options or whatever. There was a company that truly understood that literally every person who was in middle management hell, their compensation was directly based on the production and the volume of business that this office did, right? So that meant the more business we brought in, the more money in my pocket, the more money in my manager's pockets, and so on and so forth. So everyone pushed for one goal. It wasn't to work a shit ton of hours. Who cared about the hours? We used to talk about WIT, whatever it takes, right? What you did work for were to make sure there was as much money humanly possible coming into this office, because the more they made, the more I made, the more they made, and we all shared in this, right? I think that is one of the most screwed up concepts of everything, is you get into a job that's really pushing you to put in tons of hours and all of this stuff, and talk about accountability and team. It's the most ridiculous thing in the corporate world when they talk about a team. There is no team. I played team sports. I love my sports. No, the company is looking out for the company, and we're looking out for us. That's the way it should be, right? But at the end of the day, literally one of my best managers and mentors that I look back at, this guy would maybe come into the office at around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 2:30, 3 o'clock, he was done. And he was debaucherous outside of that. I mean, he was just a train wreck of a human that drove up in his Porsche, and, you know, it was an HR nightmare of everything. But in 4 hours, he accomplished more than most people do in 12. So did he need to be there? Right? In those 4 hours, he accomplished everything to motivate and push people and put them in a situation to succeed, and handled everything he needed to handle in 4 hours. If you can do that, hats off to you, sir.
Yeah,
Walk away.
We're not all equal.
No, we're not.
I hate to break it to you, folks. We're not. I was that guy, and not until you described the Porsche. I'm like, oh, that's me. I would show up late. I would jam out my work. And then I was like, just wasting time. Just like, you know, that's and one thing that cursed me in the office was always, I project. So when I talk, it would be like across the office, everyone would hear me. Even if I'm talking at a normal volume, it's like, one time I walk out of my office, I was just talking to another manager about how I drink and get blackout drunk. More on that next episode. I drink and get drunk, and somehow I always end up at home. I'm never in jail, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's what I do. I walk out and I say, I drink and I get lucky. And 70 heads turn and look at me, and I'm like, it's out of context. Out of context. I was not talking about getting lucky. That way, unless you're interested, then that maybe.
Then, you know, my door is always open. I'm that kind of manager. Come talk to me. But look, it's funny you mentioned that your first job was managing all females. So was mine. I grew up in my world of like call centers, right? So I was in customer service call center things, and more often than not, that tends to be populated by females. And so one of my first like true jobs was managing a telemarketing room. And this is before everything went nuts. We were still calling off old school call sheets, right? So like old school telemarketing. And I had 10 girls, and I say girls because they were anywhere from the age of 18 to, I think my veteran was like 23. And that's what I had in telemarketing, making outbound calls.
How old were you?
I was at this point like 27, maybe.
Oh, damn.
Right. So I'm a little older at that point. I had other ones.
I was younger than all my females, to be clear.
Well, I was a little bit older, right? But here's the thing, and I'm not trying to get politically incorrect on where it goes, but it is an absolute scientific fact that a group of women who spend a ton of time with each other will eventually match up in the natural habitat of what women do. And so there was literally like a week out of the month that my job was like a fucking war zone, dude. I'm not even kidding. I would come into the front office and I would just like, I'd bring in donuts and just leave them down there. And like, they luckily had a sense of humor, but I'm just like, hey, you guys just keep it in there, right? Like, if you don't have to come see me, we're going to be okay. But it was like that late teen, early 20s, like 11 of them in a room together. It was like a pack of hyenas, bro. I had no chance. I mean, it was absolutely brutal. But, you know, I don't know if that taught me anything other than duck and cover. But, hey, man, it was a whole different world.
You didn't get fired for sexual harassment, so there's something.
Yeah, no. Hey, well, look, if we're talking about office, we can say that. Can we be realistic on anything? If you get caught up in sexual harassment, you are quite possibly the stupidest human in the entire world. Because I don't think anybody reports you for sexual harassment on the first shot. I think if you make a pass and you say something stupid, you're probably going to get by with it. It's the persistence.
Oh, we've got to talk about this. I think this is a good segue, just because I want to talk about my theory of office hot, and I think this lovely lady is a great segue into that. Clancy Burke is her name, and she's telling an embarrassing work moment.
One time, Kyle and I were doing a very, very serious story about drug addicted babies, babies who are born and their moms are addicted to drugs, and then the babies are. And it was a very serious story. And Kyle and I wanted to do like kind of a fancy maneuver where Kyle was going to walk backwards and then he was going to walk backwards into a doorway.
By the way, she's on my team. I'm going to have a hard time. No pun intended.
So let's say this is the door. Kyle was filming me, like I'm here. Kyle's filming, and he was gonna go like this, and then walk.
By the way, I love this newscast. Look at that robe on the wall. By the way,
I know. Like I love this.
Yeah,
She might be my hero.
Some subtext.
Wait,
right?
Jeff, is this OnlyFans? Is it not safe for work? Is she getting ready to close the door and come out in the robe?
No, it's next episode. I need to remember to give this is for mature audiences only. No, she's not. There's no nudity in this episode, I promise.
Off like that. Which, oh my gosh, I'm doing it now. It is hard. I don't blame the guy for what happened. You're gonna hear this.
You bet it's hard.
So we had this whole thing prepared, and I did my intro, like drug addicted babies, blah, 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 like really serious stuff. But then what happens is Kyle doesn't clear the doorway. Kyle crashed into the wall. But the funniest part about it was he made a noise. Like he was like, oh, and like I'm doing.
That is the best to me. That is the best part when someone audibly makes the.
That sounds like a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
We've all been there though, right?
Yeah,
where someone just makes an unnatural noise, like
doing serious stuff, and then all of a sudden that happens, and I just start cracking up. But the reason this was even worse is because you didn't know anything happened behind the camera. If you watched it back, which I didn't save the clip because I was too upset about it, I wish I had. But if you watched it back, it just looks like the camera got a little shaky. I had the microphone on me, so you couldn't even hear Kyle because it was so far away. So you didn't know anything happened. What it looks like to the viewers at home, I'm just being blunt, is me saying like drug addicted babies are, blah, blah, blah. Like people are being addicted to heroin and and I started cracking up to the point where I couldn't stop laughing. And
I feel like that's a thing too in like meetings where you make the little joke to the people around you, and then somebody starts snickering, and then all of a sudden it just gets out of control.
It just goes and it grows. Now it's a little different now. I think you've stepped out of the corporate world since the shutdown, but now that you have all these meetings in Zoom, it becomes even harder to maintain your shit. Well, it becomes harder to maintain your shit because now everybody is just texting. So I have like 3 guys that anytime we have a sales meeting,
like this.
Right, a text will just pop up that is the most inappropriate, hilarious thing that it feeds exactly into what we're talking about. And now you got to hold it together. It's newscasters should get way more credit. We did last episode was Florida Man. I told you off the air, one of the most impressive things to me was the ability of the newscasters to talk about these stories with a completely straight face as if it was not a big deal at all. Like there was a whole 5-minute news segment about a guy who got caught on somebody's Ring door camera pulling over in their driveway and taking a deuce in the middle of their driveway. And they're like, well, what happened was he stopped in and like, how are you just not fazed by this? I'm so surprised it doesn't happen more often.
Yeah, no, I could not do that.
No, it's like Anchorman.
Yeah, the worst thing though is that when you make the joke quietly and you're in a room of like, again, I guess this doesn't happen. The worst thing ever is Zoom fucking happy hours. But because I did work after COVID for a little while, fully remote, and Zoom happy hours are the worst, because the best
my
part about
God.
happy hours is getting your coworker to the side. Like, I was always the alcoholic, so it was always like me and a couple other people were at the bar while everyone else was doing their shit. But we drank so fast, we had to, post up at the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just talk shit. And I'm like, that's the best. You can't do that in Zoom happy hour. And by the way, it's like, then your boss's boss comes on Zoom happy hour, and every time he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm just enjoying this drink. Everyone has to fake laugh. And I'm like, this is the worst. And I did it too. And I'm like, I hope I die of cancer. I deserve it.
So during the whole shutdown pandemic, I was working for a very large flooring company. Anyone in the Northeast or Midwest knows the 588-2300 somebody today.
588-2300. Even I know that.
Okay. So I was working for these guys, and they usually would have a year-end meeting that all the management would get together and go to Chicago where the office was, but they couldn't do that. Now, I'll give this company credit and props to the point of Jeff, like seriously top notch. They sent everyone who was going to have to do this week-long training / meeting that normally would have been held in person. They sent an Uber Eats card to your house and filled it up. Like, they were giving you like $70 a day to get like lunch and dinner. Okay. They did a happy hour every night. And in the happy hour, I got a box delivered. It was like it was Christmas, dude. I had boxes getting delivered to me the entire week prior. And there was a box that was delivered that had specialized drinks and glasses. So at every happy hour, they would have a bartender come on and teach you how to make the cocktail that they had shipped you with like little bottles of gin. And I was blown away. They hired a magician to come on one night and do a virtual magic thing.
Zoom magic.
So yeah, Zoom magic, which is really hard to be impressed by. I'm just saying. I mean, I get it, but
I did some Zoom comedy.
Right,
Magic's probably better.
But it was crazy. These guys took it to the next level. But even then, it was like every day you had a happy hour. And so it would be like 30 faces on a screen where you're like sitting around drinking, and they tried to like make trivia or something. It's just awkward. Nobody knows when to talk, or it's just bad, dude. Like, this has become, I don't think I would have survived in the Zoom school world, but in the business world, it's become meetings, and everybody wants you to have your camera on, and you have to pretend to stare at your, oh my God, dude.
Ask Jeffrey Toobin about having your camera.
Look, it does give you some great moments though, right? The company I'm working with now is like, everything is unfiltered. And I think through being on Zoom, people get a little more comfortable and you can just let shit go. So there was one time, is nationwide, we have sales reps, and of course they get appointments to go to, and they're talking to people about how they're struggling. And they go to one particular sales rep and they go, your last month has been tough, whatever. And this guy just lost his shit. Like, he just let it go. He was like, well, if the fucking company would do what they were supposed to do, started calling out the VP of marketing, and like everyone else on the call was like, and then all of a sudden you see click.
Isn't that the best when someone loses their shit in public?
Oh,
it's like,
great.
Yay, I get a show.
Yes. But again, if that was a true life meeting, right, you could get away with that response in the background. When it's on Zoom, like it's being recorded, like you can't really even celebrate. But it was so awesome just to walk into like, that got fun.
That's when I go, I'm not in the camera. Oops, I dropped something.
Right. Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. So here's something else that I think you probably have had to deal with this a lot the past 3 years or so. I opted out of all of these type of situations. We're going to be real tight on the pause play button here because
Yes.
NBC needs that money.
Is that you cannot make fun of a person for something or some action they have done that.
So yeah, 9 seconds should be.
Yeah, that should be
good. Yeah, so sensitivity training is a whole other thing that started to flare up last time I had an office job when some certain events we're not talking about, but I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need to go to a lecture about why white people are bad. I'm cool.
So Jeff,
I'm not racist.
We'll touch on this, and the beautiful thing is the industry that I've spent most of my career in is construction and in-home sales. And so you have just sales reps who, by their own admission, proudly will tell you their lack of education. They're very happy that they have a 9th grade education and they're making $200,000 a year selling home improvements. It is what it is, and it's a skill.
Yeah,
but they're not the most refined folks. So
Empire today,
dude, keep this going on. No, keep it like it's either an HR nightmare or an HR attorney's wet dream is what I've lived for 20 years, my friend. Keep playing this.
You can only make fun of things that they have control over. Like Oscar is gay. That is his choice. We can make fun of that. I did not choose to fall in.
By the way, Jim looking at the camera, I felt like I feel like this show was. I'm trying to figure out but I felt like that every time I was in an office and something like this happened, I feel like I would just look at the camera and be like, "There's no camera there."
No, you were Jim. I think that's the key to this is we all had a Jim, right?
Like, you need a Jim. Yeah, you need the guy who's just like,
it's just looking at you like, dude, I don't even know what to say at this point. And what we talked about on the Florida Man episode, Donald Glover. Donald Glover has perfected the look of the awkwardness, but like, hats off to my friend here, Mr. Halprin.
Krasinski.
Yeah, John Krasinski. He also this guy's in the team photo.
Oh God, yeah, he might be the original.
He might be the OG.
Into a koi pond.
Mike, you still can't make fun of people for race or gender or sexual orientation.
By the way, the most endearing thing about Michael
into the room. You are a waste of life, and you should give up.
The way he treats HR. The very best thing about Michael.
It's fantastic. And dude, I will say this. A good friend of mine, he is involved with a woman who is in HR. I think that in today's day and age, I can't even begin to imagine how tough that job is, no matter where you are. Nobody understands anything anymore. There's no black and white. Everything's gray. You have no idea what's going to offend.
There's a lot of black and white.
Well, but you don't know what's going to become offensive to anyone anymore. And,
everything's offensive to somebody.
To somebody. Who was it? There was some comedian somewhere that was like, I'll paraphrase it all together, but like, who told you that you had the right not to be offended? Like, you can be offended. That's okay. Yeah. Like, you can get up and walk away. Like, where did that wall come into place? It's like, nobody's allowed to offend me. Like, no, yeah. So Michael Scott's disdain for Toby, the Scranton Strangler. Spoiler alert. No.
My son gets in arguments all the time with me. He's like, well, where was Toby during this scene? And I'm like, all right, you're 10 years old. I think you've watched too much of The Office.
Is what I want to say, but I won't, because that is why we are doing this. Right.
By the way, my brief stint in management, I had several of those where I was like, that's what I would say, but that's not what you should say.
Well, look, can I tell you, it's an absolute skill that I have, and somehow it's found me. is I have a tendency of working with people who have zero filter and are an HR nightmare, but I have the ability to bring them into me, and I let them be as politically incorrect and say everything that they wanted to say. And then I go, I get that. I understand it, but you can't say that. No, here's what you have to do instead. So I just let them come in like Yosemite Sam and fire off all their weapons and get it all out of them. And then I'm like, can't say anything that you just said. Here's what you got to do. I'm like the HR mediator. Like,
Yeah.
It's
the it's exactly that. It's like, do not repeat what I say to HR. This will not go well for any of us. Any of us. I may have
Between you guys saying stop because I want you to stop, or stop as in stop. You're making me laugh so hard. What you're so funny. You were on a roll. I am busting a gut.
Yeah.
Oh, bro.
I didn't have many of those funny bosses. I kind of wish I had a Michael Scott in my life.
I wish I had to. I had funny bosses, but they weren't Michael Scott funny. Like, you just had to appreciate their humor. Like, I had one boss, and again, a dude I can like just say is a mentor to me, that the favorite thing for this guy to do is he was like a regional manager, and we would bring in new management. His first time through training, he would be like, hey, man, when you finish up with Thursday, I'm going to take everybody out for drinks. Let's go out. We're going to have a good time. We'll go have dinner. And then he would wait. We'd work till like 10 o'clock. We'd go out to a local bar. And the whole time at the bar, he would just order food, and he would order shots, and he would order drinks. And he's like, yeah. And then like an hour into it, he would just walk out. And then his fun was the manager trainee that's like, where'd he go? Like, he's not coming back. He's like, I can't pay for this. Like, he hung so many bills on me at the end of the night.
Oh, Jesus.
He would just order shot after shot after shot and food after food. And then I would go in the next morning, and he would give me the money back. It was just for the fun of the fact that he would do this. And childlike Jeff, he had this deal in public to just make a scene of whatever it was. He would throw things, right? So I'll give you a boss story. We take out a trainee. We go to this place. We're at this bar hanging out. We're all drinking. And it's probably 11 o'clock at night. It's me, him, and one trainee who's been there for like 4 days. And my boss at the time ordered like a Bloody Mary. So he had a lemon that was on the edge of the Bloody Mary. And as we're sitting there and the guy's like talking to my boss, he's like, yeah. And he just takes the lemon off his glass, and he turns around and he just wings it across the bar, and it clips this girl at the bar in the ear, just like bam. And it flies off her ear and it hits the bar. She's turning around looking, and he's just mid-conversation. He does this with two more lemons. Now, at the same time, I'm watching the girl at the bar with her friend. They're looking at two guys who are playing the Big Buck Hunter, the game over here on the side. And the one dude happens to have a water. And he walks up to the bar to get more water. And the girl puts two and two together and says, I see a water glass. There is no lemon. You're the asshole who threw the lemon. And now she explodes. She explodes. She's like, what are you doing? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's like, who throws a lemon? He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, oh, really? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like exploding. He's dying laughing. I'm embarrassed. And then as the guys walk away from the Big Buck Hunter, they come back and they sit at the table right next to us with their girlfriends as the two guys from the Big Buck Hunter. Dude, dead-faced, pan, nothing. My boss looks at him and goes, dude, what was that all about? He goes, she thought I threw a lemon. He goes, who throws lemons? He's like, I fucking know. And he's freaking out. Like, this was his game, dude. He did this. He dined and dashed.
Like a sociopath.
he is damn close to a sociopath. Like, dude.
No, I think he's full-fledged.
He might be. But dude, yeah.
Oof. I should know. I once, my buddy was driving his now wife's car, and he's like, look, her radio stations aren't in order. What do you think about that? And I'm like, well, she's definitely a psychopath, but high likelihood she's a sociopath. And and she didn't like that response by me. And then I got in my car, and my radio stations were not in order. I'm like, oh fuck, am I a serial killer waiting to happen? I identified this behavior in other people, and I haven't. But no, he's that guy's crazy.
Well, yeah, okay. So, side
he's
note
probably
on whatever.
in jail.
No, he owns a very successful home improvement company. But look, this is a dude who I've never met anything like this in my life, Jeff. That was just like the thrill. He's always searching for the thrill. Okay, this guy easily. We went to Atlantic City one night before a sales conference we had to go to, and he was the first guy I ever met who took out a marker. I'd never been with anybody who took out a marker. So we went in a casino, which is a line of credit. So we go to the casino, and he walks back to like some little thing and sits down, and they give him like 10 grand to gamble with. And you have 30 days to repay the 10 grand. And he's going to the blackjack table, and he's playing like 3 hands on $100 minimum, like just chasing the juice on everything. And you know, he was like, look, if I lose, he was like, I take out the marker so my wife won't know. He was like, she won't see the credit card. I just got to pay it back in 30 days.
Jesus.
Bro. And then last story on it to solidify the sociopath, because now you've got me down that path. Him and I ran a marathon together in Las Vegas. And he talked me into running marathons because he had this thing about mental toughness, right? If you can make it through a marathon, you don't have to really train. You just got to be mentally tough. So if you've ever ran a marathon or been there, I know you're an avid runner.
Marathon.
Really?
28.4 miles. Got a medal downstairs.
Look, our 26.2, we're in Vegas. And so, you have to go the day before. They have like a convention, and there's like, you go through and you get your number, and there's all these vendors and everything. So we're at the Mandalay Bay in Vegas, and we walk in, and we're going through, and there's all these vendors. And I went up because I wanted to buy a t-shirt, and I'm like, I'm going to get this shirt. And I grab it, and I go to the vendor, and I'm like, how much do I owe you? And he goes, no, you pay for everything up front. So the Mandalay Bay had set up this corral that you went to all the vendors, and you just picked up whatever you wanted to in this giant convention center. And then you stood in line to go through and pay. There's no way that this dude ever made less than $500,000 a year that I'm talking to you about. Like, money wasn't an issue, but he heard that, and it was like Christmas. Every place we went to, he just started stuffing bags. He had bags full. He was like, what size are you? He threw in shoes. And he was like, let's go. Walking straight out the door. I'm freaking out. I'm this poor little country boy from North Carolina. Like, I'm going to get busted. I'm going to get arrested in Vegas. He's like, act as if, and just walks out the door. We got back to the hotel room, dude. I won't even tell you the number of hundreds of dollars that were just, and from someone who never needed to, brother. It was
man. Hey, rich people are smart. I mean, not all of them, but take the deal, man. Let's hit one more video real quick, because I want to talk to you about my whole thing about being office hot.
Oh yes, we were going to that. Office hot, bring them back.
But before that, this is just satisfying video. You know the dude you work with who has the standing desk or that thing? Here's so much. We got to cut back to that one. I mean, this right here is like, sorry, I had to fly by my face. This right here is the thing that every time I was an office prankster, and every time I was like, what's the worst that can happen? And this is about the worst that can happen. They turned off the video, which pissed me off. That dude looked like he broke thousands of dollars of equipment.
I want to see the aftermath. And look, there's so many things as a sports fan that angers me about that. One, you weren't going to make the shot. The ball's way too big. Why are you even screwing around throwing a giant ball at a hoop?
Yeah.
Two, the unfunny
Yoga balls
unathletic
should
guy.
not be in the office space.
Thank you. And then, but yeah, we needed the aftermath. Like, I don't want to see how we got there. Tell me how it ends.
Yeah. So that's so one thing that I always found so amusing was, now tell me if I'm a freak for this. Going back to college, I remember sitting in classrooms and being like, if we got stuck in this classroom for, a day, 2 days, a week, whatever, who would I fuck? Is that a weird thing, or is that every guy? Like, I have conflicting stories between people who lie and people who tell the truth. That's my theory.
We're
But,
hunters. We're hunters by
But
nature.
the office is the same way. I've worked in an office where it's like, there's not a lot of talent here, but it's like, but I'd fuck her if she pulled me into a broom closet, and probably her and her.
Oh, dude. Look, I had to have an uncomfortable dose of reality just recently as I was talking to a girl that I'm seeing now. And I was talking about how we're doing this show we're going to do about Office. And just randomly through everything, she's like, well, how many women have you hooked up with that you worked with? I did an uncomfortable inventory. I'm just saying, in my adult life, it's like 3/4 of the women. And to the point where I was talking to my ex-wife about this, where I'm like, holy shit, I have a problem. And she rationalized that as you do grow older, as you do move through life, you spend an inordinate amount of time at work. For those of you who have daily 9-to-5s or whatever it may be, the office is going to be a place. Right? And there is office hot, Jeff, because there's a piece of cred, right? There's a piece of credibility that comes with that too. Like if you're the dude who ends up hooking up with the hottest in the office, right? I mean, there's a piece that everyone else has a little bit of, I don't know.
This is not a hottest in the office story, but I gotta share this one. This is awful. There's a chick I worked with whose brother, for whatever reason, for a while was working like the front door, like the receptionist, basically. So every time you came in, you had to pass him. Not, that's. I just worked with the girl, and a bunch of us were going out, and I had arranged, because this is in Tampa. I live in St. Pete. I don't drive drunk ever, so I arranged I was going to spend the night at this person's house.
Oh no!
And I was going to sleep on her couch, but the night progressed, and here the office politics. I'm sure you know this. You go out at a bar, and the whole crew's there, and 20 minutes in, it's 80%, and an hour in, it's 60%, and 2 hours in, it's 10%, and then there's the last two people, and I don't, again, not my proudest moment, but we were fooling around a little bit. And her brother heard some ruckus. He also lived there. I was supposed to be sleeping on the couch, but I was not. And he came in, and he did not take kindly to what was going on. And he went on a rampage and started punching the wall. He punched holes in the wall. This was like a Friday night. And he also threw my sneakers off the balcony. I picked them up the next day. It was not really a problem. I started walking my socks. Anyway.
Things that aren't a problem in Florida, right? Being shoeless for a night. You're fine.
And he's got 2 casts on his Broke his hands punching the wall.
I have so many questions, Jeff. What kind of noises were coming out that he had to go be chivalrous?
It was not
brother.
even. It was not even the full. It was actually just kiss it. Like it was.
Heavy,
I mean,
heavy petting.
Sure, we'll go with that. It was not even those kind, but it was enough ruckus that it was like, what is this happening at 2 a.m? Why is my sister's room? Why am I hearing, giggles and all the like a weird? I get it. Like, but yeah, his reaction to seeing me, and it was like, okay.
Boy, that begs into so many other things.
This is uncomfortable. Right? And then I have to walk by him every day for months while I'm like, where's the back? Is there a back entrance?
How's your hand? Is it good? You all right?
I'm like, look, I don't even know what I did wrong. Like,
see, this is what I was going to say. And this is why I say the other question thing is, my older sister was one of the greatest people that I've ever been blessed to have in my entire life. I don't know that I would get that amount of angry if I found out one of my friends was, would I be a little uncomfortable that one of my friends hooked up with my older sister? Probably, but it's a little odd to get to that level, right?
I used to try to set my friends up with my sisters. I'm like,
right,
you're better than the douchebags out there. You should date my sister.
Yeah. So when you get to that level of anger,
I was not friends with this guy necessarily. I was not friends, but I was not. It all came out of nowhere, and apparently he just had a real strong reaction.
Apparently, look,
I talked to the chick on Monday. And it's like, I think it's best we not tell anyone. I'm like, well, I've already told a couple of people.
I could not tell.
But I'll tell them not to tell anyone else. And now I'm knocking over whiskey bottles.
Oh, no.
Now I'm telling it on the Dads and Drink show.
Look,
so
like, Jeff, did you see John's hands? Want to know how it happened? Look.
That was the awkward thing. I told a couple of, I had 2 guys I was real close with in that office who were hanging out that night. And they're like, God, what happened to and I remember both of their names. I'm not saying them. What happened to his hands? And I'm like, well, those 2 knew. But everyone, other people be like, God, what happened to his hands? And I'd be like, I don't know. It's a mystery. And my buddies would just die laughing every time someone's like, why won't he say what happened to his hands?
Right.
And I'm just like, no.
If you ask me, I think the guy has anger problems. I mean, I've seen him yell at customers. I'm just saying.
Yeah, he did say he punched a wall. I mean, I think that's the answer. Who knows? He's not a sports fan, but maybe he is secretly.
So as we touched base briefly in the sense that I've never been the guy that subscribes to the don't dip your pen in company ink and or don't shit where you eat.
75%.
I'm just saying, here's the deal. Like, one, we talked about this on one of the very first episodes you and I ever did together. That was on for the Jeff Macolino podcast. I'm not a swipe right guy. You don't see me on Tinder or Bumble and you don't swipe right. But I am the kind of guy that I have a good enough personality and a little bit of a sense of humor that if you spend enough time around me, then I can grow, right? So fishing from the work pond allows me to outkick my coverage more often than not, right? Girls who would not give me any amount of time otherwise can get to know me a little bit. But I will tell you this, if I give you any level of caution is do your research, boys and girls. Understand what you're stepping into. Because not always, but sometimes maybe other people within the company have fished in that pond as well. And it can get horribly uncomfortable.
Yep. Dip your pen in company ink.
Well, look, Jeff, at one time, like again, I'll go back to 75% of the time, that was it. There was one time that it wasn't even happening. but one of the owners of my company was very sure that it was happening. And it just turns out that was his favorite pond to fish. So literally at like 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, I'm passed out drunk and I'm just banging on my apartment door. And I go to look out, and the owner of my company is standing on my doorstep, hammered, banging on the door and saying the name of said woman who was not in the apartment with me at the time, just in fairness. Like, what do you do? What do you do?
Folks, we're going to have more Office episodes. And I encourage you strongly, either in the comments below or there's a link in the show notes, to send us your stories so we can talk about them.
Let's share this.
Yeah.
Look,
send it.
Spoiler alert, in a small note, you don't answer the door. You
Oh,
deal
God,
with it
no.
in the
No,
morning.
nobody's
you
home.
deal with it in the morning.
Nobody's home.
Oh, Jesus.
Here's the channel I'm going to recommend. It kind of sort of the clip I'm going to play. Sean Murphy, hilarious comedian. He's a feature act for Mark Normand. I saw him live. He was also on the Jeff Macolino podcast. I don't know why my voice deepens.
You had Mark Norman?
No, not Mark Normand. Sean Murphy.
Okay. All right, Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy.
I do have a picture with Mark Normand, but but Sean Murphy was on the podcast. Subscribe to his channel and check out his special Neil, because it is special and funny. And I'm just going to play a short clip.
It was a tough job because people are mean to fast food workers, and you don't have to be. Our self-esteem is low enough as is. We started now hiring closers. One gave a shit. Own sign said now hiring losers. And even the employees were like, yeah, that sounds about right. Better keep it up there. It annoys me, man, because when I was younger, my parents told me, go to college, get a degree. That way you won't end up flipping burgers. I went to college. I got a degree. There were no jobs. And they're like, what are you, too good to flip burgers? Yeah, you fucking told me that. My generation didn't become entitled in a vacuum. You can't create Frankenstein's monster, then act surprised when it's sleeping in your basement when it's 30 years old. And I'm not saying my generation doesn't suck. We do. But it's a little annoying to be called the worst generation by people that didn't want to shit next to a black person.
Spicy. Spicy. Bringing the heat. Yeah. I had the awkward encounter with Mark Normand after the show, because I'm an idiot and I'm like, hey, I only came here because Sean Murphy was there. We are.
Oh, there it is.
In case you're wondering how tall Sean is, he's about 6'3" and 150 pounds. That's what he looks like. 280 something pound behemoth. Yeah, so subscribe to Sean Murphy and watch his special Neil. It is tremendous. He's very good. Jeremiah, I wanted to tell you about my longest blackout ever, which started because we were doing an Office Beach Day.
What?
Yeah, so I show up to Beach Day with a handle of Captain Morgan, which is not my usual beverage, but it's my morning drink back in the day, and some Diet Coke. And you know what? Maybe we'll segue this to next episode. Oh, next episode is going to be drunk stories, folks. And I will tell this story then, because Jeremiah reminded me to tell this story.
Oh, I will, because now I'm intrigued, because like some of my best blackout stories end up with Captain. Captain Morgan might be the one drink that you could end up just literally drinking from the bottle. At some point in the night, you don't need chasers. You don't need mixers. You just need a little bit of the captain.
You know what you need? You need
That's a great shot.